Record.
Perfect. Thank you, Quinn. So yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay, and thank you, Audrey, and the BookingSync team for putting these virtual webinars on. I think now is a good of time as ever to be having these conversations, and it's great that we can do them virtually and not in person. Cool. Okay, so like Audrey said, my name is Quinn. I'm the product lead for Wheelhouse. I've got a short presentation here just to share more about what we're seeing on our end from our data, some things that we're hearing from our customers, and some tips that we have. And really the three areas that I'm going to be spending the most time are these questions that we've been getting a lot from our own customers. So how should folks be thinking about revenue management during this crisis? What are some things that we're seeing on our end in the market? And what are some things that Wheelhouse can do to help you? So the first up is going to be how to revenue management during a crisis. And you don't need me to remind you of this, but we're obviously in unprecedented times. And really, there is no playbook for something that is this uncertain and rapidly changing every day and week. I'll do my best to give you high-level advice that should work for most places, but really, this is on a case-by-case basis depending on where your properties are. And I think most of you are probably in Europe. So I tried to share some data insights into some European markets, but again, it really depends where you are, even within a market. So it really just depends on what's important to you right now as a property manager or a PMC or a host or an owner. I've spoken to a lot of people in the last few weeks since this outbreak has really gotten worse. Some are trying to communicate, or some are trying to just power through and over communicate with their guests to make sure that they know how much cleaning they've been doing between places. Others have switched from short-term rentals to long-term rentals. Some folks have completely shut down for a few months and are trying to just hunker down and wait for the virus outbreak to get better. Obviously, not everyone can get by with zero revenue for a few months. So ultimately, you need to figure out what is best for your situation. And we'll be here to help as much as we possibly can. And again, I'll do my best to share some things during this webinar, but feel free to reach out to us afterwards. Our email's here. You can always reach out and we can do our best to help you. But ultimately, I think the other big thing to keep in mind here is making sure that you're reacting to the short term and doing everything that you can to drum up any demand as possible, but also protecting yourself far down. So once things will get better eventually, travel's not going to be disappearing forever. Things will get better. People will travel again. So just making sure that you're protecting those stay dates that are farther into the future so that you can capture that higher demand once people are ultimately allowed to travel again. Okay, so what are we seeing in the market? The two main points that I want to cover here. What is the data telling us on more of the macro high level what is it telling us on the high level piece? And what are we actually hearing from our customers on the micro level? So I'm going to focus on 4 different markets just to show how the virus is manifesting in different ways. The 4 markets that we'll step through are Paris, New York City, the Catskill Mountains, which is a drive-to market just outside of New York, and Ibiza. And I just want to reiterate that what we're seeing, or this is what we're seeing kind of on the overall market level. Even within these markets, there's going to be a lot of nuance. So ultimately, it can depend still on a lot of things, but this is what we're seeing in general market trends. So I'll step through each of these 4 markets in a little bit more detail, starting with Paris. As you can see on that bigger chart on the left, that's the occupancy that we're seeing as of today. And it's not a big surprise, but we're seeing pretty different data for 2020 than we saw last year. And the blue line is going to be 2020, the data for this year, and the yellow line, the yellow-orange line is going to be last year. But we're seeing cancellations obviously are way up. Occupancy is down about 70% for the month of April, even though, as you can see on the charts on the right, prices are about the same. The top chart is ADR. This is the price that bookings are actually happening at. You can see prices haven't really changed that much from year to year. And then the ANR, the lower chart, is what prices are listed at now that have been unbooked. So as you can see, price just is not a big factor in urban markets, unfortunately, even though prices have stayed the same or even have been lowered in some cases, as you can see on the ANR chart, occupancy is way down. The silver lining, though, is that in most markets that we've been looking at, you can see a shift around summertime. Granted, I think that's when travelers are hoping that things will get better. We'll ultimately see what happens. But there are some positives. There's some silver linings that things will get better around the summertime. But right now, we're just seeing that price is not a huge factor in urban areas that have the shelter in place. New York City, again, pretty similar. This is the current epicenter of the outbreak for us in the US. We're seeing pretty similar trends as Paris and pretty much all major cities around the world right now. On the bright side, though, here's a market, the Catskill Mountains. These are the markets that we're referring to as the drive-to markets. So the Catskills are this mountain range that's about a 2 to 3 hour drive outside of New York City. And a trend that we have been noticing in a lot of these densely urban areas are some vacation markets that are outside of these areas are actually seeing a pretty big uptick in demand. And it makes sense, right? It's people want to get out of the densely populated urban areas. It really depends on the traveler. I know some people, I live in San Francisco in California. I know some folks that have been trying to get out of the city and rent bigger houses just a few hours away just to wait this out a little bit. Not everyone is able to rent places for a few weeks. So I think some people are just staying with family and friends. But a trend that we're seeing, if you can drive to a market, we are still seeing some higher demand. And what you can see is ADR is up about 15% from last year, and occupancy is up about 2 to 3 times what it was last year. So again, some silver linings. Urban areas are obviously getting hit pretty hard, but some of these more vacation drive-to markets where it's still allowed to actually travel. I know there's some areas around the world that have been just shutting down travel altogether. But again, there's some silver linings here depending on where you are. And lastly, the fourth market we'll step through a little bit more that has just slightly different booking trends here is Ibiza, one of the Balearic Islands off of Spain. They recently had a travel ban implemented, and a few big events have been canceled in 2020. And as you can see, occupancy is down for April and May. But what we're seeing right now is those bookings are still holding strong into about starting May and for the rest of the year. There's a chance that these haven't been canceled yet, but this is one of the stronger patterns that we're seeing in some of these markets in Europe, that the demand is still, or occupancy is still pretty high or higher than last year, starting around May and onward. So I think there's still some hope that things are going to get better this summer. And ultimately, it just depends where you are, where your property is. And we can generate these charts fairly easily. So if you reach out to us send us an email. We can generate these charts for where you are. So let me know if you're in a different market and you want to see what the trends are looking like for you. So that's what we're seeing from a data perspective in a couple different markets. Now let's see what our customers have been saying. We've been reaching out to just about all of our customers the last couple weeks just to see what folks are doing, what they're seeing in their local areas. And it's kind of all over the map. We're seeing some people say that their vacation area does not have any cases, and yet still local governments are shutting down travel, but they're still getting some folks coming in. Others seem to think that it's, this one's pretty silly, think that it's based on how your American politics, depending on which side of the aisle you are, means you are more or less likely to be traveling right now, which is a pretty silly theory. I don't need to go through too many of these, but there's an interesting quote that we got here from someone that's in a national park near Utah, I believe, and they have been advertising their excellent cleaners. They've been over communicating, reaching out to all of their guests ahead of time, making sure that the guests are aware of their cancellation options, and they've been able to keep travelers coming in and booking at their place despite all this. And again, I know it really depends on your area. Some places have just banned travel altogether right now. Some areas have not. It really just depends where you are. But there are still some things that you can be doing to be drumming up demand. Another thing that we've been seeing, I don't know if it's in any of these quotes on this page, but some folks have been lowering their minimum night stay. That is, if you have a higher minimum and you're in an area where there is still some travel going on, that is a way that you can try to make your place more attractive. Again, if you're able to do that, that's great. But I know there's just some areas that just want to be limiting the amount of people traveling in general. So that's another thing just to keep in mind is, do you actually want people staying for just a few nights in your place? It depends what you're trying to achieve during this unprecedented time. Okay, so what can Wheelhouse actually do to help you? So 5 main points here that I want to talk about. So we've got a couple features on our side, and I've got some screenshots that I can share in this presentation just to help you control your minimum price depending on the time of year, the day of week, any specific events. You can set a bunch of minimum price rules just to make sure that when travel does pick up again, you're not selling yourself short. So you're protecting your stay dates farther into the future while lowering the price. If you're in a market where price is still one of the drivers, you can just be smarter with how much you're lowering your minimum price, as well as your minimum stays. So you can set a higher minimum, you can set rules, and again, I'll show you some screenshots just to help you achieve some of your short-term and long-term goals. On Wheelhouse, you can also set seasonality and date range overrides, and you can do this on a bulk level. If you're someone that has a lot of properties, and if you're using BookingSync, that's most likely you're someone that has a lot of properties or you're managing multiple properties. You can do all of this just on a bulk level, just so you can make sweeping changes to your portfolio all at once. I've already mentioned this a few times, but you can reach out to us. If you send us an email, hello@usewheelhouse, we can check out your particular situation and try to give you some advice and show you some of the data that we're seeing. And you can get a hold of us 24/7. We're always here. We've got support that can get back to you via chat at any time of the day. And then also, if you aren't a Wheelhouse customer yet and you sign up with us, we're extending all of our trials into the end of May at this point, just that you can actually see if we're something that can help help you make more money and actually revenue manage in a smarter way. And the good thing about our billing, we don't have any upfront fees. There's no cancellation, or if you, there's no hidden fees, no setup fees. You can cancel anytime, and we'll only actually charge you a percentage of the bookings that we priced. So if we are not getting bookings, you're not getting bookings with us, we won't charge you. Okay, and now stepping through a few screenshots here. This was the dynamic minimum price that I mentioned. So you can just be setting minimum prices depending on the day of week and based on time. So a good way to protect your calendar is setting one of these after rules, saying that if anyone's trying to book more than 90 days in advance, there's just a higher minimum price. So that, again, you can protect those stay dates farther into the future. Here's a similar screen, but now with minimum stays instead of with minimum price. So you can play around with different rules depending on what day of week and specific events, specific date ranges. You can just get smarter with your minimum stay rules. And here's showing just that bulk level that you can be making these changes to multiple properties at once, and you can be overriding specific stay date prices as well. These are what we call fixed prices. So if you set your own price, it won't dynamically change every night. And we also won't charge you. If you get a booking with a price that you set, we will not charge you for that. Okay, so just if there's anything that you get out of this, a few key takeaways. These are not easy times. I mean, this is obviously hitting all of travel. All travel companies are being impacted by this on some level. We're trying to put ourselves into our customers' shoes as much as possible and learn about all the different scenarios out there and be as empathetic as possible, because we know this is just unprecedented times for the travel industry. But things will get better. It's still early, but we're seeing upticks in some markets around the world. I think it's going to depend on a lot of things, obviously. No one truly can predict the future. It's just impossible to do right now. But one thing that I just want to make sure that everyone out there is listening to and ready is being able to capitalize once people are willing to travel again. I think that you obviously don't want to sell yourself short once travel bans get lifted around the world, and we can be there to help you. And I know you have a lot of options out there for pricing tools. I think just using any of them at this point is going to help you. And obviously I'm biased and I think that you should be using Wheelhouse, but there are any sort of demand-driven pricing tool right now is just going to help you a lot. So just to get back to the key takeaways, there's no playbook on what to do. You can always reach out to us to figure out your particular area. I know there's a lot of tips and tricks out there in general that work for some areas, but really it's a case-by-case basis. And as we're seeing, this is not always a matter of purely price sensitivity in most places. Create a strategy based on your own needs and location and adjust accordingly. Again, we can help you walk through some things that might work for your area, but create a strategy, stick to it, and adjust as things change. And be prepared for short-term and long-term market conditions. And you can always reach out to us for a free consultation. Okay, and with that, are there any questions out there? Let me see if I can.
Thanks a lot, Quinn. Thanks a lot for the presentation and for the great insights that you shared with us today. I hope it was helpful. I will unmute the microphones of the participants just now. So if you guys have any questions, feel free
Bah non, non, en fait, le problème, c'est que comme justement c'est irrégulier,
I
sur
think...
ce moment-là, il y en avait.
Okay, I just muted you, Lorian, because I think you were on a call. So yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask them, either by writing it in the chat or just asking them orally.
Quinn, can we contact you on the email that you just gave us?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that one more time?
Yes. Is the email you just gave us the right email to reach you?
Yeah. If you send us an email, hello@usewheelhouse, that will just go to our support team. You could also send me an email. I'm Quinn, QUINN,
Yes.
at usewheelhouse.com. And actually, I'll put this into the chat on Zoom if people can see that. Let's see if that sends. Okay, I just sent my email in the chat for the Zoom call. And Michael, I see, did you also ask about receiving charts for Cannes?
Very interested in that, yes.
Cool. Yeah, I can, I'll take a look at that.
I'm writing an email to you instantly.
Perfect.
Merci.
I maybe have one question or one remark, Quinn. It looks like the impact on the bookings because of the situation right now is that bookings tend to be more last minute as well as longer. Did you also notice this, and do you have any specific recommendations on that?
Yeah, it really just depends on the market. We have been seeing some folks have been making discounts for the longer stay. I think in some of these drive-to markets, some of these wider spaces that are outside of cities, we are seeing an uptick in just longer bookings that have been booked with very short notice. So we are seeing that in some markets. I think though, that's my answer as Quinn, the person who works at Wheelhouse and is trying to help property managers make money from their places. Quinn, the concerned global citizen, also is, I know that there's some places where people are just not advised to travel in general. And I think that if you are having a lot of short last minute stays and back-to-back guests right now, making sure that you're just the cleaners are spending extra time cleaning the apartment so that there's no risk for spreading the virus. Yeah, it's a complicated answer.
Definitely. Yeah. I get your point. Yeah. Thanks. All right, then if there is no more questions, I guess we can close the webinar now. So again, thanks a lot, Quinn, for the presentation. Thanks to the Wheelhouse team also for the job you're doing and for all the data you provided today. Thanks to all the participants to join. Again, sorry for the time confusion. And I wish everyone a nice evening, a nice good day for you, Quinn.
All right, thank you very much, Audrey.
And talk to you soon. Good luck, everyone. Have a nice one, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, Quinn. Bye, everyone.